how can there be creative solutions? And, aging water infrastructure is often overlooked until it becomes a critical issue. How do those things all come into play with water engineering?
Yeah. So, to pick at water scarcity, let's first define the problem. So we all know with climate change, certain parts of the country are going to have more rain on average, which is where I'm sitting. And then certain parts of the country, like Southeast U.S., Southwest U.S., and the Southern Great Plains are expected to have longer durations of drought. And to put water scarcity
is one of the most pressing issues of our time. And as we move forward into 2024, it's becoming increasingly important that we find solutions to this growing problem. As engineers, we have a critical role to play in addressing this challenge, and it's imperative that we understand the complexities involved in solving it. Join us as we discuss innovative engineering strategies, cutting-edge technologies, and collaborative efforts aimed at addressing the pressing issue of water scarcity with Jennifer Brunton, PE, CFM, Senior Vice President, Water at WSP. I'm your host, James Taylor, and this is the Civil Engineering Podcast. It's now time for our Civil Engineering Conversation of the Week with Jennifer Brunton. Jen, welcome to the Civil Engineering Podcast.
I am so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Jen, can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you built a career as a water engineer?
Yeah. My career has almost taken me through, actually, I think it has taken me through the entire water cycle. My undergrad is in environmental science, and I started my career sampling groundwater. I, by nature, am a fixer, and I felt like in environmental science, I was characterizing, all the problems, but I wanted to fix it. So I went back to school to become an engineer, and I spent the first part of my 25-year career with river systems and stormwater and surface water systems, a lot of ecosystem restoration. And then when Superstorm Sandy hit the New York metro area, which is where I live right now, I'm in New York City, I pivoted towards coastal flood protection. And that really, led me to some of these larger infrastructure projects like urban stormwater systems and dams and whatnot. So, I think I definitely am a curious and I love learning. So it's probably why I've taken this path, but it's landed me in pretty much the perfect role for me. Right now, I'm the East Water Lead at WSP, which means I get to interact with folks across 25 different offices and they deal with the entire water cycle. So that's great.
So you said you've gone through a lot of different pieces of the water sector, if you want to call it. Is there a favorite, or is it, favorite right now, I guess, is where you're sitting at?
I think I just love learning. Right now, I'm learning a lot about PFAS treatment, which is a fascinating place because it's actually a super exciting time in the sense that we have this nut to crack. We know how to extract it from the water, but we don't have scalable destruction technology. And so it's like the race is on. So it's, we're not just in this mill where we're running. Like it's those types of things where it's like these nuts to crack that I'm really enjoying it.
Well, the interesting thing, right, water been around for forever, right?
Yeah.
And you think, oh, water's water, but all the time these things are coming up with new technologies and new things that you need to worry about. And you brought up PFAS as a big one. That seems to be at the top of everyone's minds right now, in those forever chemicals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you talk about how water engineers have become a central player as we grapple with the headline issues of today?
Yeah. So, most of us are like these introverted engineers, right, that have been happy to play in the background. And we've recently moved from those fringe positions to the center stage. And most of the time, it's not good news. We're in the news because there's another 1,000-year event, or, a community doesn't have clean drinking water, or a reservoir, the levels are going down and revealing hidden treasures and dead bodies, as these longer durations of droughts are happening. And, it's rare for us to have those awesome fixes, those really, innovative ideas. They don't really make the headlines. And so, I think it's really important for us, to highlight where our ingenuity and where our obsession with being a problem solver is actually moving us forward. No doubt, we are dealing with some really big challenges. Right now, it's Climate Week here in New York City, and I have had my head filled with really awesome insights all week. But we've been here before. We've dealt with challenges, and we'll be able to find our way out. One of the things that I kind of hinge on is I went to school in the 90s, and a really big hot button back then was acid rain.
Yeah.
And since then, we've reduced sulfur dioxide by 95%, the emissions, and then we've reduced nitrogen oxide by 95 and 90%.
Yeah.
And we did this by, great policy, but also we engineered our way out. We found these cleaner ways to reduce emissions, also cleaner energy. So we can do this. We can get through. And it's a really exciting time now. Like I said, there's a lot of nuts to crack, but we have this trifecta that we're in, where we have this massive need, right? The climate change, aging infrastructure, population changes. We have massive funding, albeit not enough to do everything that we need to be doing, but we actually have funding from the bill and the IRA. And then we also have public endorsement, right? They actually, not everybody agrees on the same thing that we need to be doing, but they all agree something needs to be done. And so it's this beautiful time to be, in the field that we're in. And suddenly we're very popular.
Well, it's interesting you brought up the aspect of the 90s and the success that we've seen since that point in time. Even myself as an engineer, don't sit there and think about, okay, it was the engineers that really made this happen. And so, thinking about how much we have to communicate with the public and show the importance of engineering, because that really is the ones that are solving the problems related to this. What's your take on public involvement as it comes to sharing out engineering?
Absolutely. I mean, actually one of the events I was at today or this week, one of the speakers said, we've got to be careful. Like we had this, rhetoric, to say just how big of a crisis, whatever it is, climate change, aging infrastructure, PFAS, right? And that helps garner the support. But we also have to show that we've been here and we can solve it, because, one of the things that is a risk is inaction, because people feel overwhelmed by it, right? So, showing we have to define the problem and communicate it in a way that's tangible, but there's things like past lessons learned, there's ways that we can show that there is a path forward, and we need some time and we need engagement.
The issues facing water engineering can be a little bit daunting, specifically water scarcity. This seems to be seemingly a finite problem. How can there be creative solutions? And, aging water infrastructure is often overlooked until it becomes a critical issue. How do those things all come into play with water engineering?
Yeah. So, to pick at water scarcity, let's first define the problem. So we all know with climate change, certain parts of the country are going to have more rain on average, which is where I'm sitting. And then certain parts of the country, like Southeast U.S., Southwest U.S., and the Southern Great Plains are expected to have longer durations of drought. And to put water scarcity, into a perspective from a global perspective, the World Bank estimates that by 2030, will be at a 40% shortfall of where demand is versus where our resources are. And climate change is part of that, but we also have population increases and that aging infrastructure you were talking about. So it does sound daunting, but there are solutions.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, like the scarcity aspect, probably not here in the U.S. or in the eastern part of the U.S. where you and myself are both sitting doing this interview, but the western side of the country, it seems like that is definitely the hot topic of as you slowly see, and you see the pictures of the Hoover dams going down further and further each year. Like that's not just a water issue, that's an energy issue as well. And all of that combined comes together of, okay, that's a little bit of a scary task to take on. I mean,
but there are solutions. I mean, there's three main buckets. One is water, establishing some new sources. And then the second is data, using data to better manage the resources that we do have. And then the third is fixing the leaks, right? Fixing the water losses that we have. And so, to unpack that first one for a second, the main component of the new water source is recycling of wastewater and stormwater that we normally treat and discharge. And it's a concept that's been around for a long time. Actually, the first potable wastewater system was in operation in the 1960s in a southern African country. So it's been there for a while.
Yeah.
And we do have cities here in the US. There's 2 cities in Texas that have these similar systems, but rare. More common is something that we call indirect potable reuse systems. And so that's where you treat the water and then you put it through a buffer system. And that would be either an aquifer or a stream or a reservoir, and then you extract it out. And so, those are more common. In California, actually, Orange County has had one in operation since 1975.
Wow.
Yeah, really. So these are great successes, but they're not the norm. And a lot of these projects have the word like demonstration project or pilot project, right? So, we're
pilot,
just not there, right? So, and we have to get through that public acceptance period, which is where that communication is really key. How do you kind of manage the public perception? Like, do you remember the toilet, the tap, or if you heard of that, right?
Yep.
I mean, that campaign alone, words, right? Super strong, I think set us back like 2 decades. And so this is where like tenacity and good communication skills, which are probably like the recipe for all good things,
right,
come into play. There's a great case study in California. Right now, California has put an ambitious plan that they want to have 100% of their wastewater recycled by 2035. So, let's see where we are now. Let's look at San Diego. San Diego right now has 85% of their drinking water coming from surface water sources. In the last 15 years, the prices have tripled. It's definitely a risk factor for, how long, these resources are going to be. And then we have climate change, increasing sea level rise that is impacting, it's a lot, but
and everything together makes it even more of an interesting world to live in, for sure. And makes the job, I'm sure, even more fun. You never know what each day is going to hold. The second piece of that, you said there were 3 aspects, and the second piece you brought up was data. So how is data, and more specifically AI, playing a role in these items, such as managing and predicting infrastructure failures, leaks, before they cause major problems?
Yeah, I mean, like you said before, right? It's like we just haven't invested. It's out of sight, out of mind. And with anything, you need that the economics of it, but you also need the political will and the public support to get these projects forward. And that's where data really comes in, because it can help you build that business case and garner the public support. It can be irrefutable evidence, to debunk misconceptions and also reinforce your messaging. So it's really critical from that side of when we have to move in a direction to help get the buy-in. In Cape Town, there was the day zero crisis. I think it was 2018.
Yeah.
And it was a key part, data. They had dashboards to show, the reservoir levels falling, the water quality, the rainfall rate, to really communicate to the public, which helped them get the buy-in, because at the peak of the crisis, folks were allowed to have, it was around 13 gallons per day. So, and they achieved it, but they created that data. So, and then on the side of the resources, the best place to look at how we've used data is with the leaky pipes. It's really powerful, because it puts us, the data and the AI put us in the position of looking forward in predictive mode, right? So data can help us with all those things I just mentioned, but then we put it all into these models and into the AI, and then we're sitting in a power position to help navigate around some of these situations. And so, we're using it for, actually, Syracuse has a great program where they're using it with their acoustic monitoring. So they can plan, they can understand like where are the leaks, and then they can prioritize like, ooh, this one's going to blow soon. We need to navigate resources here. These other here, we can monitor them for a while, and there'll be priorities as they're evolving, but we're not going to, disrupt neighborhoods just based on willy-nilly. They're going to plan. So, very powerful.
It sounds like the difference between data and data plus AI is taking it from being a reactive mode to being more proactive in what you're doing in related to, okay, this might leak at this point in time, or, hey, we really need to fix this before it becomes a failure.
Yeah.
And that seems to be, is that kind of what you're saying? Is that kind of, it
Yeah,
takes
it's
that
like a
shift.
key. Yeah, it's a great, I mean, that's the power of it, is that
Yeah.
it can take all of this real-time data that's swirling around and help you make predictions and make decisions.
And in a world where budgets are tight, it
Yep.
also helps in that because you're able to plan better with what might end up you need to spend your money on.
Exactly. And who knows? Remember all those like engineers that went into technology and, they might be boomeranging back, because we do need them for, our models and such.
So throughout our conversation today, and even before we even started talking, you highlighted that strong communication skills are really a key element to defining the solution and getting the work done. Where have you found that this element is most critical?
I mean, reality is it's critical in all areas. Over my career, I've seen careers rise and fall, projects rise and fall, based on either the strength or the weakness of communication skills. But for projects, I found that, the one area where communication skills are particularly critical is around resiliency projects. So these are like coastal flood protection or stormwater. This is a situation where you have stakeholders and community members that following an event, they have this heightened state of vulnerability. There's emotions, there's a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
And when you're in that state, as the recipient of information, you're not at your best peak area, right? And so that means that us on the other side as planners and engineers need to outperform to kind of help make that connection. Then on top of it, we're introducing concepts to the community members that are engineering and science, right? And so again, you have to be really thoughtful about how you're laying out the information in order to gain that level of understanding and trust. And then, there's a regulatory complexity that, muddles everything up, that we all have to navigate together. And so, actually just today, I was at an event and I ran into somebody who I haven't seen since Sandy. After Sandy, there was a New York Rising, was a program that was set up to basically work with the communities to create these community-based resiliency plans. And I was talking about, this podcast and, that it was like, there was a heavy urgency on the communication. And he said, yeah, like we were really therapists, like it was. And I remembered, I was like, yeah, I actually was crying in a lot of me, like you're involved and you're engaged, you're trying to work through to find the best solution. And really the way that you navigate out of that is listening, asking questions and listening first. And then B, making sure you repeat back or, somehow communicate back that you've heard them correctly. Like, okay, these are the goals, is that right? Or these are your important assets. So confirmation, and then sifting through to say, okay, well, what are the parts that are fixed, critical, and then what are the parts that are flexible, and what are the tensions and trade-offs as we work through the different alternatives. So that has definitely been a key place where the communication skills are important. And just one, I have to say, because it's really near and dear to my heart, but the other part that's where it's really critical is just in how we're, advancing inclusion and diversity. Really honing soft skills is on the onus of all of us, because that will help us create this workspace where all the great ideas can come to the table. And it's the typical stuff of understanding your unconscious bias and, active listening. But, one thing I guess, I'd like to throw out there is it's also about putting yourself out of your comfort zone to be in situations where you're exposed to different perspectives, different opinions, and listen and see how people react, right? Because, otherwise you're in your little incubated state and, and that's really where you get to learn, is kind of when you're pulled out of your comfort zone.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think over the last 4 years we've gone through COVID, do you think communication has changed from pre-COVID to now post-COVID? Curious about your thoughts on that.
I would say so. I mean, I think for sure I've heard it from so many of my colleagues, like that one-on-one, like this, we've gotten great at, right? We've gotten great at expanding our networks because we're communicating and we are in this place of like, let's just go find the people that we need. And they could be on the other side of the country. Like clients are more open to have experts sit wherever and serve them, which is beautiful, right?
Right.
Where I don't think we completely come out of it is I have still seen like the one-on-one, and like my colleagues and I will say like, we are exhausted like after a conference because like we're just not used to it,
Right.
the pace, small talk was hard after COVID. Like I just wasn't used to it,
Yeah, it gets exhausting after a couple of days at a conference, and you're like, man, I'm tapped out of communication. Like, I'm done. Like, let me just crawl
exactly
in a spot, dark place, all by myself, and let me just regain my thoughts. It's an interesting point because we had all that time, kind of to ourselves, and coming out of it now.
Yeah,
that in person is kind of it can become exhausting for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm still regaining those strengths,
So what is the most important advice? And that's such a huge word there. And I'm not sure if there's probably one thing that you'll be able to say, but what's the most important advice you would give to engineers working in water resources today?
Well, definitely invest in those soft skills, like that is the crux of it all. If we have great ideas, that's great. But unless we can communicate them more so that we can communicate them in a way that the other party will hear them, it's, you're never going to have the impact that, your great thoughts could have. So I would definitely say that. But on the other side, if I get to have two choices, my second choice.
Yeah, two choices. That's fine. Yep. The most important advices or
okay, whatever, I like that.
Things that you advise. We'll go with that. Yeah, that's fine. Yep.
So, just be curious. We are at a really a point where we're like rapid change, right? We were just talking about the PFAS earlier about how it's like they haven't even made the scalable destructive technology. And so, we have to keep up. Like you have to be curious and learn and be open. And I guess expect those points of friction, like in that curiosity. Like if we're going to be pushing the envelope to find those solutions, like there is no playbook. There is no, we have some anchors and, physics, right? Like there's certain things that aren't changing, but, there's no playbook for how we're going to actually come out of this and grapple with some of the problems. And so, and that's where, back to the skill set, soft skills, but, anticipate and maybe get a little comfortable with some of that friction points. Like you're going to have to push the envelope.
Yeah. And I would say that if you're an engineer that's coming out of, or if you're in college right now and you're engineering and, hey, when I graduate, I'm not going to have to learn anything else. I would advise that you might want to rethink that because
seriously.
Realistically, everything that you do from the moment you leave is you're learning. And you're growing. Technologies are changing. The way we do things are changing. And, I love that you said, what you said there, right? You want to always be thinking about what's next, what's coming ahead and being on the forefront of all pieces, especially as it pertains to water resources.
Yeah. And all of your life.
And all life, right? Yeah. You're right. If you were, I can't imagine if I didn't learn a single thing over the last number of years since I graduated where I'd be at today. But no, those are two great pieces of advice is work on those soft skills and then you be curious, keep learning.
Keep going.
All right. It's now time for the CE Hot Seat segment of the week with Jennifer Brunton. All right. Welcome to the CE Hot Seat. You ready to go?
Ready.
All right. Jen, do you have any specific rituals that you practice every day? For example, do you have a specific morning ritual, lunchtime ritual, things that you do consistently daily that contribute to you being a successful professional?
Yeah, I am very big about boundaries. So I am very much like, under the mindset that no great decisions or ideas happen from your iPhone after, 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. And so, I try to really engage with my family then. I need that downtime. And so I'm very much a person that needs that separation in order to come back fully charged the next day.
What is one book that you recommend to engineers regularly, or just one book that you found to be extremely helpful in your professional and or personal development?
So I don't have a book. I have the Harvard Business Review. So
Good.
because my needs are constantly changing. So, whether it be how to deal with conflict or how to manage, millennials or how to, navigate having balance in your life and, being okay with setting those boundaries. The Harvard Business Review has just been an awesome tool for me. That is definitely my go-to.
I love it. I love it. Thinking back on your managers of the past or even current managers, picture your favorite manager. What made them your favorite?
So my favorite manager, who was the most impactful manager to me, was the manager that I had when I was having my children. His name's Gulkhan. And, I was at this pivot point of becoming PM to starting to have people under me. And then I had my first child. And, all my years under him, he always promoted me. There was never this feeling like because I was even more protective of my personal time. I also worked a reduced schedule, but I was given so many opportunities, and he would pull me in the room to try to explain finance stuff to me, or and so I have a lot of respect for him. The other thing is I would watch him leave at 3:00 to go watch his son play baseball, and here's a senior VP, that's carving out time. He's going to come back online later, but he showed me that you can have a family and you can still be ambitious, and those two can exist in one place. So yeah, he's definitely the most impactful.
Our words are one thing, but our actions lining up with
100%.
our words is completely. I love that. I've got one final question for you, and that is the critical civil engineering career elevator advice question. Yes, that's a mouthful. If you got into an elevator with a civil engineering student and had about 30 to 40 seconds with them, what career advice would you share with them?
First, I tell them they made the right choice, super exciting time, and hold that excitement. Be a lifelong learner, have a mindset of experimentation. Like in your, if you set out, especially if you frame things as, you're in this mindset of experimentation, it gives you that room to try out different paths, whether it be solving a problem or you maybe you're a manager to a new team and you're going to try out different formats of how to engage. But it's sort of, and even letting other people know that you're in this mindset of experimentation, so you're welcoming input. So it's that curiosity, having that mindset of experimentation and being self-directed. I truly am very passionate about that. There are a lot of great programs, mentor programs and whatnot, formal programs, but really the best that I have found in my own personal life is the ones that I've self-directed, like creating those micro learning sessions by, like, for me, my weakness is finance. Like that's just not where my interests are. And so, but I will, make time and seek out my finance people to help me unpack something. And, so it's like those micro sessions, like I don't need the MBA, I need, something specific. And then I learn something from that. So be curious, and have that experimentation mindset and just always drive for that learning process.
Jen, thank you so much for joining me today. Where can our listeners connect with you?
LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn. Yes, please.
I love it. Well, thanks, Jen, again for everything. And as she said, connect with her on LinkedIn. She's probably got a lot of things to share.
Yes, so much. All right. Thank you, James.
Please remember, you can find the show notes for this episode at civilengineeringpodcast.com. There you'll find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any of the resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, I wish you the best in all of your civil engineering endeavors.